Alright, so we got an incredible chapter of Chainsaw Man. As always, shout out to Fujimoto and the translators at Viz Translations. And with all that being said, let's get into the review. So this chapter picks up with the conversation that is being had between Denji and Swordman, with Swordman trying to jog Denji's memory at the first time they met. And while he's talking, we actually get the first name drop of Makima in part 2 of Chainsaw Man, because Swordman explains he was among the group of hybrids that were controlled to fight against Chainsaw Man in part 1 with Makima. And Denji, in this really depressed and uninterested look on his face, explains that in a long story short, it wasn't actually him who fought against Swordman in part 1. And this is Fujimoto finally putting to rest the debate of if Denji ever fought against the hybrids, because for the longest time, people did actually believe it was Denji who fought in the final battle of part 1, when it was actually Pochita who was acting like Denji so Denji could eventually get the drop on Makima and eventually kill her. And after learning this, the two of them stare at each other awkwardly, and without explaining himself, Denji just walks away and goes to school. But Denji can't seem to get away from Swordman, because we get to see that Swordman, who was also a high schooler, actually transferred from his high school to Denji's high school. It's revealed that the name of Swordman is Suko Murai, and his hobbies are running and playing the piano. And the girls in Denji's class are already gawking all over him, and they bring a good point that Suko, when you actually look at him, is a mashup of Denji and Haruka, although personally, given that Denji's initial character design, Adam with black hair, it really could just be inspired by that. And I guess it kind of confirms that despite Denji making a reputation for himself of being a major horn dog, the brokest teenager there, and just being antisocial and socially awkward because of, well, the depression and the trauma, girls actually do seem to find Denji physically attractive. And despite Suko announcing he didn't come to school to make friends with any of them, kind of putting on the Sasuke act, the girls in Denji's class try hitting on him even more, and he asks Denji for help by getting rid of them, but Denji at this point has had enough of Suko and just wants him gone, considering that Suko is living part of Denji's dream without even actually trying. And then it cuts over to the roof of the school, a spot we haven't been to since the beginning of part 2 story, where we see once again Denji is being a chair to Fumiko, and he's brought up here by Suko, who's trying to talk to him privately, but of course this is pretty much impossible given that Fumiko is watching Denji like a hawk. And Suko, not knowing that Fumiko is in public safety, tells her to get lost, where Fumiko rebuttals that she knows what's going on, and she is public safety's dog, so it's not like she can really walk away. And Suko, not really expecting this, is kind of flabbergasted by it, and he just goes on to explain the real reason why he came to Denji's school. And he pretty much says that he's acting as the messenger boy for the Chainsaw Man Church. And we get a major lore drop when it comes to the Chainsaw Man Church and the official name for the Hybrid Devils, because their actual name in universe were eaten by Pochita, with Hybrid Devils just being a name that was made up by the Chainsaw Man fanbase, with the other hybrids actually referring to themselves to the weapons, not makes reference to the fact that most of the weapons are just humans that had their hearts replaced with the Weapon Devils. And apparently most of the Chainsaw Man Church's top brass within the hierarchy of the Chainsaw Man Church are also weapons, and they're promising Denji a high position in the church if he decides to join them. And this relation, I would say, pretty much confirms that so many weapons like Whip Weapon and potentially the Spear Weapon, and maybe even raise a real pair later in the story, or probably as soon as next chapter. And Fumiko does bring up a good point that if it's the Chainsaw Man Church, why don't they just make the real Chainsaw Man its leader? And Suko tries deflecting this question by appealing to Denji's wants and needs, like being paid enough money to where he could eat steak every day, which, if you remember in part 1 at the end of the story, was actually a part of Denji's new dream and a lot of his new goals. But after I read this for a second time, it almost felt like Suko was really coached into telling Denji all the things that he would want. And it really does make me wonder if the Famine Devil or the Justice Devil were the ones that informed him of this, or maybe they got to Kobani, given that she was actually present when Denji had that mental breakdown and he said all the things that he really wanted to have in his life. And as Suko is saying this, Fumiko and Denji express to each other the foods the two of them will want to eat every day, with Fumiko choosing sushi and fruit parfait, where Denji picks Chinese food. And Sugo, kind of getting irritated with how childish they're acting, tells him that the food isn't a point and that Denji should understand. This is where we get a bit of backstory behind Sugo, because we learn, similar to Denji, for a good majority of his life, he was taken advantage of by less than reputable individuals. But because of what Denji did, i.e. killing Makima, which had finally freed him, and by being in a Chainsaw Man church, he's able to live a life where he can do whatever he wants. And Sugo ends his talk no jutsu speech by telling Denji to join him in a Chainsaw Man church and offers Denji protection from public safety, and even calls Fumiko a sushi woman. And Denji looks at him in this disinterested look, and Fumiko correctly guessed that Sugo was being manipulated into transferring to Denji's school and trying to recruit Denji by relaying to him and saying the things that he would want to hear the most. And although Sugo says that he's doing this out of his own free will, I mean, it's pretty obvious that the Famine Devil, or Haruka, who's pretty much officially the spokesperson of the organization, likely put him up to this. Because the Famine Devil did state to Asa that they planned on separating Denji from Pochita, which would essentially kill Denji. I mean, after all, Pochita is Denji's heart. And seeing how Sugo really does look up to Denji, seeing him as sort of like his Superman or even an older brother, given that the two of them have similar backgrounds, but Denji seemingly rose above his situation and was able to break free from public safety in part 1, I really do doubt Sugo would actually agree to have Denji join a Chainsaw Man church, let alone join a church himself if he knew their real intentions. Then Sugo, faced in reality of how Denji actually acts, says that Chainsaw Man of all people shouldn't be used as a chair. But Denji essentially says some off-the-wall type stuff, and that chairs are content in their own way. I mean, maybe he can't eat steak every day, but he does eat plenty of other tasty foods. But he says that all in all, that he's happy to live a normal life. After all, a normal life was his dream. And as Denji is saying this, it's pretty clear that this isn't the truth. I mean, we've seen time and time again in multiple chapters that this isn't really how Denji really feels. And honestly, Denji at this point has adopted a chair mindset. And what I mean by this is Denji has become so complacent in his life, despite knowing what his flaws are, how he could be better and how it could be better, and just how much he actually hates his life. Denji doesn't choose to do anything about it, and I don't think it's necessarily because Denji doesn't want to, but as the old saying goes, old habits die hard. I mean, let's face it, it's a lot harder to make a major change in your life and to overcome trauma than it is to just shut down as a person and give up completely and accept a life that you're relatively familiar with. I mean, Denji has always been put in position his entire life where he accepts the cards that he's been dealt with, and it really does make a lot of sense why he's been acting this way lately, since this really is the only life and the only way he knows how to act. Asuro gives him this disappointing, sad look and storms off. But before he walks away, we get a genuine moment from Sugo where he says he didn't just transfer to Denji's high school to recruit him because he also wanted to be Denji's friend, and that he's the one who killed Makima and finally made him a free person again. And we actually see this seems to get through to Denji because he looks up at Sugo, not really knowing what to say. And before Sugo can actually walk away, he says that it's too bad because if he came with him, he could be able to sleep with all the women he wanted to. And this statement alone is enough to pull Denji out of his depression and trauma. And we get to see in the next panel, Denji performed a full-on speed feat and was so fast, Sugo actually thought that Denji teleported, or I guess you should say lust-ported, because Denji, when he's horny, I swear to God, he basically becomes the strongest human in all of Chainsaw Man. But all jokes aside, Denji says that he thought about what Sugo said a lot, and whether he's also been somebody else's tool. And in the final panel, we get Denji saying, "You're damn right, I was a tool. Chainsaw Man Church, sign me up." And that is how the chapter ends. And this really does look like the beginning of Denji breaking free from public safety and getting out of this hole of depression that he's been stuck in since really the beginning of part 2's story. Although as the old saying goes, it's better to trust the devil you know than the devil you don't know. And I can't imagine this will end well for Denji. I mean, we know that if he does join a church and deliberately put himself in danger, it would probably break the agreement he had with Ishida, and we all know that public safety will make good on their threats against them. We know that the family known as Justice Devil have ulterior motives for Denji, but let me know in the comment section down below, do you think Denji is making the right decision here? I mean, personally, he definitely didn't think things through, he did act through impulse, and do you think Sugo was being honest with Denji? Will Sugo be the person who pulled Denji out of his depression and open himself to other people by actually being the first friend that Denji has really had in a long time? With that being said, guys, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.